Recording in progress.
Today we're going to be learning Kiddushin Daf Lamed Hey. This is the daf for the second day of Rosh Hashanah. So wishing you again a Shana Tova. We will get started with a quick review of yesterday's daf. It was a bit of a not so complicated daf, a very interesting topic, but a little bit convoluted, and I want to just make some order, and this will be helpful for today's daf as well. So just to do a very, very quick summary, we started with mitzvah say, time-bound positive commandments, women are exempt from. Then we said that non-time bound positive commandments, women are obligated. That was the Breita, and the Breita listed some examples of that and some examples of that. Then we dealt with the first part of the Breita. We had a side question which said, what, is this a general rule? Aren't there exceptions? And then we said, well, to every rule there are exceptions. Then we said, time-bound mitzvah women are exempt from. Going back to the first section of that Breita, where do we learn that from? To which we said we learn it from tefillin. Okay, tefillin is a good example. We learn it from tefillin. Then we had this question about the general principle. If, right, in tefillin we learn from, tefillin is next to Talmud Torah because they're exempt from Talmud Torah, which is clear from the pasuk. Therefore, they're exempt from tefillin. Then we said, right, we had a bit of a discussion. Why not learn it from mezuzah? And then we said, well, it's next to it in two places rather than in one place. If we take both sections of Kriyat Shema, it's next to mezuzah only in one. Then we had a side question about sukkah and re'iyah. And we said, wait a minute. If we have this general principle that women are exempt from time-bound mitzvot, why in those two mitzvot is there a special drasha in the pasuk to say that women are exempt? And we said, well, each case has a reason you might have thought it wouldn't be exempt. Okay. Now we go to the part that's going to be very important for today. Once we have that, we learn it from tefillin. The Gemara asks, but wait, why is tefillin the one building the paradigm? Maybe you should learn it from simcha, to which they said, simcha on the holiday, that's really the obligation on the man, not on the woman. Okay. Then we dealt with the almanah, the widow. Okay, we resolved that. Then we said, what about from hakel? Why don't we learn from hakel? Hakel women are obligated. Tefillin women are not obligated. Why? And both are time bound. Why do we say that we can learn from tefillin and not from hakel? To which they say, well, hakel and mezuzah are two psukim, and you can't learn from two psukim. Right? Once it says it twice, that means we're not going to learn there for anything else. To which the Gemara said, on that same note, you could say tefillin and re'iyah are two times where this is mentioned, and we can't learn from two times that women are actually exempt. So now we're stuck. What do we say? To which the Gemara answers, oh no, that's not a case of two ketuvim because each was necessary. Because you might have thought in each case that maybe women would be obligated. There was a reason to think. That's why you needed it, and it's not a classic case of two ketuvim. So we're left with, and this is the important part, matzah and hakel are two ketuvim, two psukim, that women are obligated in a time-bound mitzvah. That's why there are exceptions to the rule. You can't learn from there to everything else. And from tefillin and re'iyah, those aren't two because each one was necessary, so it's as if it's one. You can build a paradigm. To which the Gemara ended with the question, but wait, that only works if you hold that you can't learn from two psukim. But some people say two psukim is not exceptional enough. That really still could build a paradigm only if you have three. Taking a break in this question, and you'll understand today why they took a break, they now move on to ask about the second part of the Breita. And in the end, they're going to do the exact same thing that they did here. That's why I really wanted you to get the structure well. We're going to go through a very similar argumentation about how do we know that mitzvot that are not time-bound, that are all the time, constant mitzvot or something like that, right? They don't have a specific time. How do we know that women are obligated in those? And when we end that whole section, we're going to end in the exact same place. But what if you don't hold two ketuvim? And then we're going to have an answer that solves both. Okay, so now we're on the second part of the Breita that we quoted in the very beginning of yesterday's daf. How do we know that women are obligated in non-time-bound mitzvah? So we said we're going to learn it from Mora. We're going to learn it from fearing your parents, which it says, Ishimo vaviv tira'u, in plural, right? It starts off with a man, and then it says, plural, you should fear. You should fear, meaning you as the verb, you as the pronoun, you in the plural form, tira'u, which means the one who's commanded is plural. That means men and women. Okay, so now they said, once we have it from Morah, and this we saw yesterday, why don't we learn it from, so just because that is a non-time-bound mitzvah that women are obligated, but why is that the one building the paradigm? For the same token, you could learn it from Talmud Torah. Learning Torah, which women are clearly not obligated. So now they say, wait a minute. Because Talmud Torah and Pirya Ulivya are shnei ketuvim haba'im ke'echad. And we're back to the same type answer as we did last time. Why not learn it from matzah and hakel? That they're obligated. Here we're going to say, why don't we learn it from Torah and Rivia, the commandment to reproduce? Women are not obligated. To which the Gemara says, right, those are two ketuvim. We're not going to learn from there because two doesn't build a paradigm. To which the Gemara says, wait, but here we have to have two tracks because there are some people who hold that women are obligated to have children. So that's Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka. And now we start at the top of our daf. Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka d'amar al shnehem omer vayivarech otam Elohim peru urevu ba'ika lameimar. But God commands them, right? We thought women are not obligated. The other opinion, who disagrees with Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, says because it says v'kiv shua, and you're supposed to conquer the world, and it's the way of men to conquer, not the way of women. Okay, obviously, right, from a modern perspective, a lot of these sugyot we're going to struggle with in terms of conceptually, right? Women maybe do conquer things. Women should be obligated in Talmud Torah. That's a whole separate thing, right? Again, that goes back to more the opt-in or things like that. And it obviously doesn't mean women can't do these mitzvot. But it's talking from an obligation perspective. And again, also you have to remember, in those days, certainly women weren't going out conquering. And so now they say, or at least most women, I would say. So now we say, according to Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, who says, actually, they're both commanded to. How do we know that? Because it says, "Vayivarech otam Elohim puru revu." This is the commandment in the Torah, in Sefer Breshit. It says, God blessed them and said, Piru urevu. Okay, you should conquer, you of you, both of you. So otam is them. Ma'ika lameimar. So according to him, there's only one pasuk, which says, Talmud Torah, women are exempt. So why don't you say, Talmud Torah is not time-bound. Women are exempt. Why don't we learn from here? That should build the paradigm. We'll find another example. Mishum de'ika lameimar, mishum de'havale Talmud Torah upidyon haben, shnei ketuvim raba'im ke'echad. We're going to keep going back to the Shnei Ketuvim. We're going to have Talmud Torah and redeeming your firstborn son. What did we learn way back in the beginning of this section? That if you're not obligated to be redeemed, then you're not obligated to redeem. So since only sons are redeemed, then only fathers are obligated. So now they say here we have two exceptions, Talmud Torah, Pidyon haben, just like we have matzah and hakel. There, we're going to say that is the exception. It's not the rule. We're not going to be able to learn from here. But we're still continuing along here. Didn't read that right? Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka nami. But according to Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, what happens now? Peru Revu goes to the other side. If Peru, so if you don't know about Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, you only have one on the other side. You have Morah. The women are obligated in non-Taiba mitzvah, this special pasuk. One case that builds the paradigm. Women are obligated. And on the other side, you have two, and we don't learn from two. But if you're Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, and then the two depends on whether you're Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka or not. Either you have Talmud Torah and Piri Rivya, or you have Talmud Torah and Pidyon haben. Now, if you put Piri Rivya on the other side, and you say, hey, women are obligated, we now have two psukim, fear of your parents and having children. Both women are obligated in. Therefore, you would say, we don't learn from them. And it's exactly what we did in the previous suit. We said, but wait, we have two that women are obligated in. We have two that women are not obligated in, tefillin and hakel, and theoretic, I didn't say the right one, tefillin and, all confusing, tefillin and, shnei ketuvim, right, tefillin and re'iyah. Okay, we have tefillin and re'iyah that both women are exempt from, going to the temple and wearing tefillin. Why doesn't that? Why don't we say, there's only two? This can't create a general rule. Same exact thing we're doing here. Talmud Torah and Piriya Urivya and Morah, right? Fear of your parents, are two examples where women are obligated, but therefore it's only two and no more. So we now have two on one side, according to Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, and two on the other side. Again, let's just review. Talmud Torah and Talmud Torah Pidyon haben on one hand, and Piriya Rivya and Morah on the other hand. Okay, so now we're stuck, two and two, and now we shouldn't learn from any of them. So, srich. Now they say, wait. Just like we did before, we said on the previous page, tefillin and re'iyah were both cases going to the temple on the holidays and bringing sacrifices, and tefillin. had a unique reason why the Torah had to tell you that women are exempt. Likewise here, Pirurivya and Morah, we're going to have unique reasons why they each needed mentioning. Once they have unique reasons why they each needed mentioning, then it's no longer a case where, the Torah said it twice because we don't want to learn from here to anything else. No, the Torah said it twice because I had to say it twice. And then, again, you could build a paradigm. So what are the reasons why it's Sricha? Hava Amina, you would have thought, let's go back to the beginning. Sricha, I skipped the line. If it said fear of your parents and it didn't say reproducing, having children, you would have thought, but wait, maybe they're not obligated because it goes with conquering. And but women don't generally conquer the world, so you might have thought they were exempt. And therefore, the Torah needed to say, otam. That's why it uniquely says it there. The ikata pirurivya, belokata mora. There would have been a reason if it only said women are obligated to reproduce, but it didn't say it by fearing your parents. You might have thought, this is another one of those complicated, it's hard to digest sentences. A man is free to do what he wants. So it's easy for him to do fear of your parents because his time is his own. This goes a little bit back to what we suggested yesterday for one of the reasons why a woman's time is not her own, why she's not obligated in time by mitzvah, because her time isn't her own because she has to do things for her husband. So here they say, again, we could go with the option of the husband, and the husband, there might become a conflict where the parents want her to do one thing, the husband wants her to do something else, and she's torn in the middle. And in fact, there's all sorts of halachot discussed about what you do in that situation. And really, the halacha is you're supposed to do what your husband says. So in that, or theoretically, you could say, if we go back to Moshe Feinstein's answer, it's her children, and she's busy with the children. She can't always be able to be and fear her parents the way she might want to. So, so maybe we'd say, look, since there's going to be cases of conflict where she won't be able to do it, maybe we don't obligate her at all. Sricha. That's why the Torah will tell you, no. Even though there might be scenarios where the woman won't be able to do it, but she's obligated. Okay. And then the question is, right, how we handle situations where it's real conflict. That's not our topic for right now. So we end up with, we tried to say the shnei ketuvim on both sides of her being obligated in non-time by mitzvah and her being not obligated. And then in the end, we say, no. The two ketuvim are really in the side of not being obligated in these non-time by mitzvah. But the two that say that she is obligated, those still built a paradigm because each was mentioned for a unique reason. And therefore, you can't say shnei ketuvim habim ke'echad ein melamdim. So now they say the following. And now we're going to end up back exactly where we were in the previous sugya, which is this whole idea. Again, this is to teach you, how do we know women are obligated in non-time bound mitzvah? And the reason is because we have tefillin on one side, not tefillin. We have, my mistake. We have, we're going to start with morah, right? Fear of your parents. And possibly, according to Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, we'll get to fear of your parents and pirurivya. But each is unique and they build the paradigm. Each is necessary to say. On the other side, we have two, whether it's Talmud Torah and pirurivya and reproducing, or it's learning Torah and pidyon haben on the other side. And those you can't learn from because it's two and we don't learn from two. But you know where this is going now. This only works if you say that you can't learn from two psukim. But the one who holds melamdim, you can learn from two. What can you say? So now we end at the exact same question we were at in the previous sugya, because again, both are set up exactly the same. We have, there it was tefillin as the example, and on the other hand, we have these two psukim, and tefillin and re'iyah really, but we then said each was unique. In this case, we have the two of morah and possibly also pirurivya, which are each unique. Those build a paradigm. The two on the other side don't build a paradigm because they're two psukim. But the other two not building a paradigm is only if you assume two psukim. So what if you don't? The people in the city of Papunai or the village of Papunai, they know the answer to this question. Umanu, and who is that? Rab Acha bar Yaakov. This is a reference to Rab Acha bar Yaakov. He knows the answer. Amar Kra. Let's go back to the first one. Okay, how do we know tefillin is the one we're going to build a paradigm from? The tefillin women are exempt, and therefore they're exempt from all time bound mitzvah. Amar Kra. When it talks about tefillin in Sefer Shemot, it says this should be a sign on your hand and a memory between your eyes. Leman tieh Torat Hashem beficha, so that the Torah of God is in your mouth. What do you see here? It talks about tefillin in the beginning of the pasuk. It's a sign on your arm and between your eyes, and it's so that the Torah of God is in your mouth. Huksha kol haTorah kula letefillin. Here we have a comparison, right, between tefillin and Torah, or juxtaposition. Tefillin mitzvah aseh shazman grama b'nashim p'turot. Therefore, tefillin is the perfect paradigm for all of the Torah, for everything. So since tefillin appears in the Torah and says tefillin is a representation of Torah, it means that we can learn all other mitzvot from tefillin. So if tefillin women are exempt, that's going to build the paradigm. And then, so now we have it, why even if you don't hold shnei ketuvim, if we have it on a scale, tefillin, or we're going to learn from matzah and hakel, we have tefillin and re'iyah on that side, tefillin is going to be the one that will weigh things down. And that's the one we're going to learn from. Now, how do we what about the second section where we learned it all from fearing your parents? So we're not going to have the same type of answer here. What we're going to say is, once you establish that from tefillin, we're going to learn that women are exempt from all time-bound mitzvot. Well, then, what can you infer from there? If they're exempt from all time-bound mitzvot, from there we can infer the mitzvah to say shelo azman grama nashim chayavo. Well, then, obviously, if this exemption is specifically for time-bound mitzvot, then non-time-bound mitzvot women will actually not be exempt, and they'll be obligated. If you're not exempt, you're obligated. And that's the answer. That's answer number one. We're going to have a bit of a problem with this, and we're going to have 3 tracks. So just so we're clear before we move on to the other tracks, this track is to say, you learn it really all from tefillin. Tefillin is compared to all of the Torah. So what's true for tefillin will be true for all the Torah. Women are exempt, women are exempt. It's time-bound, so women are exempt from time-bound mitzvah, which then the inverse of that sentence is, well, if it's not time-bound, then women will be actually obligated. But what's the problem with this? You might remember, I mentioned this yesterday. They now say, when we do mitzvah, that's if you hold tefillin is a mitzvah, that's time-bound. But some people say that tefillin you can wear during the day and at night. Some people think that tefillin can be worn on Shabbat and Chagim. So, according to him, it's actually not a time-bound mitzvah. And then we're stuck. How are we going to learn from here? So, what do they answer? In other words, remember, our question is only if you don't hold by the shnei ketuvim and you think 3 ketuvim. But if you hold 2 ketuvim, then you actually don't need this. So the answer is, Man shamat le'damar tefillin mitzvah aseh shelo azman grama, Rabbi Meir, v'savar la shnei ketuvim abein ke'echad, v'chol shnei ketuvim abein ke'echad, ein melamdim. So now what do we say? If you hold tefillin is a mitzvah aseh shelo azman grama, that goes back to our first answer. Then tefillin is the paradigm, because it's compared to all the Torah. From there, we learn that that also if it's not time-bound, they'll be obligated. But if you think that tefillin is a mitzvah aseh shazman garman, you can't go with that track, then you go back to the original track. And what do they say? The one who says it's not time-bound is Rabbi Meir. And Rabbi Meir is also the one who holds that shnei ketuvim habeim ke'echad melamdim. Okay, so he can go with the original track, which is tefillin and re'iyah. Okay, maybe tefillin he doesn't even have. Re'iyah is our example. Riyat Pnei Hashem, that says, right, women are exempt. Because it's time-bound, women are exempt. From there, we learn to all other places. Why not for matzah and hakel? Because that's 2 psukim, 2 ketuvim, and 2 ketuvim you can't learn from. So that's the next section. Okay, that's track 2. We're going to have 3. Okay, so again, let's go back and just read that again. Man shamat leid amar tefillin mitzvah aseh shelo azman grama. Who's the one who thinks it's not time-bound? Rabbi Meir. And he holds savrala shnei ketuvim beim ke'echad, chol shnei ketuvim beim ke'echad, ein melamdim. We don't learn from 2 ketuvim, and therefore, again, you have re'iyah on one hand and hakel and matzah on the other. Hakel and matzah you can't learn from, so move on. Ula Rabbi Yehuda, but what about Rabbi Yehuda? Da'amar shnei ktuvim rabim kecha melamdim utfilim mitzvah haseh shasman grama. Third possibility is, wait, Rabbi Yehuda holds both that tefillin is not time bound, so you can't learn from tefillin. He also thinks that two ktuvim don't teach you anything. You have to have three. So none of the options work for him. We're going to need a third chart. Ma'ikav meimar mishum. Now, on the previous page, we took simcha out of the picture because we said simcha, she's not really obligated. This would have to assume that simcha, the woman, is obligated in simcha, and it's not that her husband or someone who takes care of her is obligated to make sure she does, do the mitzvah of simcha for her. But she's actually obligated. So we have simcha, matzah, and hakel. That's three cases where a woman's obligated in a time-bound mitzvah. That's why we can't learn from there, and we can actually learn from Re'iyah, okay, from going to the temple 3 times a year. And Shloshak Tuvim Be'im Kechad Ein Melamdim. Okay, so that, I'm not going to repeat it again because I feel like I repeated it a number of times, but we basically have 3 tracks: the Rabbi Yehuda track, the Rabbi Meir track going in reverse order, and the first track, which is we're going to learn it all from Tefillin. Okay, that's how we end up resolving. And now you understand why we brought the other sukkah. We asked the question first on the first line of the Braita: how do you know women are exempt from time by mitzvah? Then we got stuck with, what if it's two ktuvim? So to answer that question, we moved on to get to how do we know they're obligated and not time-bound mitzvot. We did the same kind of argument. We have examples here, we have examples there. In the end, they say, in the end, we're right again, the same shnei ktuvim example, but both end with the same question. So for that answer, we had to bring something else which resolves both in one. So it was a good way to organize it, even though it was a little confusing why they were jumping and they weren't answering the question at the time. But at this point, it became clear. Now the Gemara continues and says, we're now going back to the Mishnah. We're done with the time-bound mitzvot. Now we go back to the Mishnah. And the Mishnah had said, when it comes to mitzvot those were positive commandments. When it comes to mitzvot that are negative commandments, kol mitzvot lo taseh, I'm back in the Mishnah on Daf Kaftet, ben shazman grama, ben shalasman grama, it doesn't matter if it's time-bound or not, echad ha'anashim ve'echad ha'anashim chayavim. They're obligated no matter what. Other than, don't make this rounded haircut around your head by cutting off your payot entirely. Don't destroy all the payot of your face. This is shaving and all that. We'll get to that later. And lo titameh l'metim. And kohanim were not allowed to become in contact with dead bodies. So that's only male kohanim, not female. So now the Gemara wants to know where we get this all from. We're going to have 3 different psukim, and then the Gemara is going to explain why we need 3 different psukim, even though it's a bit of a weird sricha, because usually it's just 3 different opinions, and we don't usually ask, why do we need all 3? We don't. Each person just took a different one, but the Gemara is looking at this as a whole and saying, well, what does each one offer that the other one doesn't? This is when a person's obligated to bring a sacrifice for sinning, and they need atonement. It says man or a woman who does any sin. Okay, it has specific sin, but that's not important. A man or a woman who sins brings a sacrifice. So there you see, men or women. The pasuk compared a woman to a man when it comes to all punishments. So just like you have to bring a sacrifice, you're punished because you did something wrong, you have to bring a sacrifice. Likewise for all other punishments in the Torah. In the house of Rabbi Eliezer, they brought this bright. That's the beginning of Parshat Mishpatim. These are the laws that I will put before you. For you in plural includes men and women. All laws, these are mostly monetary laws that are discussed there. In the house of Chizkiah, they brought a third pasuk. This is if you're sure gores a person, whether it be a male or a female. That's what it says in the pasuk. It says, if he was a shor nagach, he had done it 3 times. And the owners didn't watch him. And he killed a man or a woman. Here you see women are included. Hashur isakel the gamba alav yumat. And then they say, well, really the owner's supposed to get killed. The shore for sure gets killed, but the owner's supposed to get killed. But the next pasuk says he can pay a ransom. But the point is that you're liable for killing a woman, just like you're liable for killing a man. So now, why do we need all 3? They're each 3 different, and you'll see, right? You can analyze them on your own. What the differences are, the Gemara is going to give their analysis. Utsricha. Why do you need all three? If we had the first one, you would have said, Mishum kapara chasar rachmana aleh. In order, now a punishment also comes with atonement. So yes, it's true you're punished, but your punishment atones for your sin. So we want to allow women atonement just like men. But when it comes to monetary law, maybe you say, look, men are the ones who generally do business dealings, not the women, again, in those days. And therefore, maybe women aren't included in those laws, monetary laws. And that's why you needed the second pasuk to say, no, they are. Now, this is a regular way of living, meaning you can't live without monetary laws. So Rashi says, why can't you live without them? He says, Hakol goes linot and dibor matchil dechayuti, 3 lines from the bottom at the end of that line. Everybody would steal from her. If there's no monetary laws relating to women, number one, they'd steal from her. Number two, she could steal from other people. And if she steals from other people and can't be brought to law, to a court of law, he goes, nobody will want to be anywhere near this woman. They'll stay far away from her because they'll see, oh, she could steal my stuff. And no one's going to bring her to a court. So it's necessary for life. So therefore, women are included in that. Aval kofil, but you might not have thought, ish debar mitzvot in ishalo. But maybe when it comes to paying this ransom payment for killing them, maybe you'd say, look, because she's not involved in mitzvot, she's not obligated in certain mitzvot, maybe she's not part of that whole thing. Now, if you say, if you kill a man or a woman, you're going to be obligated, you might not have been able to learn the others because mishum de'ika ibud neshama chas rachmana ala. That's in the end, killing a woman is no different than killing a man. She's got a soul. She's a human being. Of course, we're going to obligate you. But but you might not have known about the other two, that she's going to be punished, that she's subject to monetary law. So, and that's why in the end, you need all three. Okay, so again, what we did in this section, we basically said, how do we know that women are obligated in all negative commandments? And there seems to be total equality in 3 different areas. So they have 3 different psukim to show, both in punishments, both in monetary law, and also if somebody injures you or kills you, there's going to be responsibility for women as well. Next, mibal takif ubal tashchit. So now we get to the exceptions to the rule. Why are women not included in not the tamei lemetim, right? Like the kohanim, the bak kohen like myself, I can go to a cemetery, but my brothers and my father can't go to a cemetery. And bal takif and bal tashchit, that's not relevant to me. You can shave off your beard. If you have hairs, facial hairs, you can take them off. You don't have an issue of any of these issues that relate to men. So, which we'll see what they are. Bishlama, so now we have to understand where we get this from. Bishlama bal tamei lemetim, dichtiv emor lekohanim b'nei Aharon. B'nei Aharon v'lo benot Aharon. So when it comes to, and now I'm going to pull up the study guide. The study guide has the psukim that are important for today. So it says in Vayikra Kaf Aleph, Pasuk Aleph, Vayomer Hashem Moshe, Emor el hakohanim b'nei Aharon, the sons of Aaron. This seems clear that it's men. V'amarta lehem, the pasuk continues, L'nefesh lo yitameh ba'amav. Don't become tameh to anybody. So b'nei Aharon v'lo benot Aharon. Ela bal takif ubal tashchit minam. Where do we get this from? Dichtiv, and now we're going to go to Vayikra Yud Tet. Now there's 2 psukim that talk about removing facial hairs and the peot and all that. One is a general commandment to regular people, and one is a specific commandment for kohanim. Okay, so let's just read where they are so you see. Okay, if you see in Vayikra where we were, Parakaf Aleph, Pasuk Aleph, where it said, Emor el Aaron, el hakohanim b'nei Aaron, says who you can become impure to. And the next section is Pasuk Hey, next Pasuk, right? We started in Aleph. Lo yikruchu korcha b'rosham, you can't shave off all your head. Upe'atz kanam lo yigalechu, and you can't shave off the peot of your beard. And bivsaram lo yisatu saratet, and you can't make any incisions on your skin. You can't cut your body. Okay, like if you're mourning for someone. Okay, also the korcha, the shaving is in mourning, and perhaps even the shaving off the peot, but that seems to be a general warning. So now, in the pasuk in Perek Yud Tet of Vayikra, in verse 27, Kaf Zayin, it says, Lo takifu pe'al roshchem, v'lo tashchite pe'at tzancha. And those are the 2 commandments that we're talking about in our Mishnah. Don't shave off the hair, right, the sides of your hair, so you end up with this round kind of haircut, and don't destroy the peot on your beard. The corners of your beard, there's like 5 spots that you're not allowed to shave off. Now, we want to know, how do we know that women are not included in that? Minam. Dichtiv lo takifu pe'at roshchem velo tashchich et pe'at zkancha. Kol sheyeshno b'ashchata, yeshno b'akafa. Well, since la'ashchit, to destroy, and la'akif are mentioned in the same pasuk, so we're going to learn from one to the other, since women are not involved in lo tashchit, which we don't yet know why, but since they're not part of this part of the sentence, then they're also not part of the first part of the sentence, okay? And that's how we get lo takifu doesn't relate to women. Because they're not part of hashchata, that doesn't relate to them. So obviously, lo takifu pe'at roshchem also doesn't relate to them, right? Like women don't have a problem to remove hair that's on the side of their face. But how do we know that they're not part of this destroying the pe'ot of their beard? So, okay, well, women don't grow beards. So it's just obvious. And that's why. So again, once it's obvious they're not part of hashchata because they don't have beards, then lo takifu pe'at roshchem, which theoretically women could have some hair on their sideburns, well, that doesn't apply to them. Or you could say they learn it from a pasuk. Now, what pasuk? Well, that's the pasuk we just read here in Vayikra, chapter 19, verse 27. Okay, which I highlighted here. Well, midashani krab b'dibure. They changed the wording a little bit. What does that mean? Notice it says roshchem, your heads, and then it says zikancha, which is roshchem is plural, your heads, and pe'at kanecha is singular, your beard. So the inken yachtav rachmana pe'at kanchem. My zikancha velo zikan ishtecha. What it means is your beard, but not your wife's beard. So if your wife were to have a beard, she would be allowed to shave it off. Now, or take it off, remove the hairs. So now the Gemara says, okay, that's basically where we get it. So let's just go through our three commandments that women are not obligated in, negative commandments. Number one, don't become impure, right? To your relatives, for Kohanim, it's because it says B'nai Aharon. Okay, that whole commandment was given to the sons of Aaron. Lo takifu pe'at roshchem comes from lo tashchit. How do we know lo tashchit? Either because it's just obvious because they don't have beards, or because the words changed from rashechem, where it was plural, to kancha, which is singular. Singular means men and not women. Okay. Now the Gemara says, wait a minute, vilo, really women are not part of lo tashchit patz kanecha? If a woman grows a beard, she actually can take it off? V'hatanya. So now we're really questioning the Mishnah. Doesn't it say in a Braita? Zikan isha v'hasaris shehe'elu se'ah harehen kezakan l'chol t'varehem. If a woman grows a beard, or a eunuch who usually doesn't have facial hairs, but they did, their beard is treated like a beard for all intents and purposes. Now, what does it mean l'chol t'varehem? Ma lav lahashchata. Does it not mean that it's you can't destroy it? What else would it be? So Amar Abaye, can't be. Okay, that can't be the way we understand it. We're now going to prove why it can't be that. Eventually, the Gemara will get back to, well, then what does it mean? But right now, that's only going to be at the very end of the daf. So Amar Abaye, lashchata lo matzit amrat, deyalev pe'at mibnei Aharon. So now they say you can't possibly say it's for pe'ot. The women aren't, the women can't shave their beards, because we learn from Gzeira Shava of pe'at kanam lo yigalechu by the Kohen, and pe'at roshchem by the women. Pe'at kancha by the women, by the pasuk about men. We learn Gzeira Shava mibnei Aaron. Now, bnei Aaron, we already established that because it says emor lakonim bnei Aaron, the sons of Aaron, that it's only men and not women. So, and then that presumably, and that's going to be a debate here, but right now we're going to assume that applies to all the psukim in that section, which start with impurity to dead people, and then it moves to shaving and all sorts of other things like shaving off all your hair and destroying your body, mutilating your body. So now they say, Malahalan nashim p'turot, afkan nashim p'turot. So just like there, women are exempt. Likewise, it must be here. Okay, that's a Gzeira Shava. The word appears there. The word appears there. The pe'at must be the same. V'isvir alan d'chtiv d'chi katav b'nei Aharon akulu inyan aktiv. Now, if you want, right, and we have to assume that when it says b'nei Aharon, it's talking about the whole thing. But wait, if we just assume that b'nei Aharon is talking about the whole thing, comes the Gemara in question and says, wait a minute. If the words B'nai Aaron refer not just to impurity to dead, but also to the whole section, including the Peot here, well, then Nishta Kramine, V'tete B'Kavachomer, you don't need Gzeira Shava at all, because it could have just said nothing, and you would have known from a Kavachomer. V'an Amina, I would say like this. The Kohanim have all sorts of extra laws, and yet it's only limited to the men. So Yisrael lo koshake. Well, then all the more so. If the people who have the most mitzvot associated with them, more rules than anybody else, or more stricter rules, right, in terms of we can marry, all sorts of things, and yet it doesn't include women, then the place where it includes all of Israel, and our second pasuk, it would have been obvious that also it would be only men and not women. So you don't really need a Gzeira Shava. So now we're back to square one. Why do you have a Gzeira Shava? They're saying if you didn't have the Gzeira Shava, you might have thought that maybe the B'nai Aaron is really only for the impurity, and it doesn't continue on to pasuk Hey. And when you say lo yitameh, right, you have the end, or even here la yitameh. Some people say where it says just to the achot haptula, to her you can become impure, and then it stops already, and then the rest of that section is actually for women as well. Well, we're going to have a question on that though. You could say actually that maybe it really did, and maybe the rest of the section theoretically could be toward women. But an imishum Gzeira Shava, and if you're going to say, well, there's a Gzeira Shava, well, you could actually say this, because what are you assuming Gzeira Shava? We know that Pe'at and Pe'at appears in both, and therefore make a Gzeira Shava. So what else would the Gzeira Shava be if not to teach that's only women, this is only women? Well, I could actually tell you that maybe you could have a different Gzeira Shava. And that's going to reject this whole way of thinking, that we're going to learn it from the Kohanim to here by the Gzeira Shava. Because you could say, now we're going to get more into these details of the shaving and what actually is forbidden. We need actually the Gzeira Shava between the Kohanim and the Yisraelim for a totally different reason, not having to do with men exclusively and not women. Lo yigalech. Okay, it says, the Kohanim, pe'atz kanam lo yigalech. So now, what does it mean, legalechu? To shave. Shaving is normally done with what? Not with, right? It says, Yachol gilcho b'misparayim yachayat. Now, shaving could be done usually with a shaver, but it could be done with scissors. So you might have thought you'd be liable. Talmud lomar, lo tashchit. Well, because when it says pe'atz kanam here in the Kohanim, it says lo yigalechu, don't shave. When it talks about pe'atz kan for Yisrael, it says lo tashchit, don't destroy. Now, scissors don't really destroy. So therefore, you're not actually going to be liable if you use scissors, only if you use something that destroys completely. Okay, well, if you need destruction, complete destruction, what if I pluck it out with tweezers? Or I use a plane, which is a very, very, it's a kind of implement that was used for shaving. Maybe you would think I'd be liable. Talmud lomar lo yigalechu. It has to be something. A plane is actually, sorry, I said it wrong. Plane is not generally used for shaving. It's something that theoretically you could use it for shaving, but it's not really used for shaving. So because it says don't shave, and as we're taking the combination of lo yigalechu and lo tashchit to say what's true for one is true for the other, it has to have both lo yigalechu, something you generally shave with, and bal tashchit, something that actually completely destroys. So, right, a plane and tweezers would completely destroy, but they're not things you shave with. And scissors is something that you shave with, but they're not something that you completely destroys. So what do they answer? So now, haketzad, what is the case then that you're actually to be liable? That's where we get to it's a razor, and that's why the halacha is men can't shave with a razor specifically because of this, because it has in it both the language of shaving and the language of destruction. So now the Gemara says, Im kain nichtav rachmana et shebizkancha, my pe'atz kancha shma min atarte. So now they say, okay, now we were at a question. We were trying to say the Gzeira Shava is used for that, and it's not used to teach that women are excluded. To which they say, then it should have said, it should have used it without the word pe'ah. Okay? And you would have known, 1 second, I just have to get one thing here. No, 1 second. Right, Hashanami if Sika Inyan. If the Gzeira Shava is just teaching us that, it could have said Etche B'Kancha. Right. And then lo tashchit etz kancha, we would have understood. Right. You can learn pe'ah too. And also nashim p'tor. Right. So now in the end, they basically say, don't think that the Gzera Shava is only for that, and then it wouldn't be used for our purposes, which is to teach that women are not obligated. But because it could have just said et kancha, because pe'ah is already mentioned at the beginning of the pasuk, so that would have been enough. No, in the end they have to say, because remember, the pasuk says, I'll pull it up just to see. The pasuk says, lo takifu pe'at roshchem, where the pe'ah is already mentioned in the pasuk, but lo tashchit pe'at kanecha. The fact that pe'at is repeated teaches us we can learn two things from here. We can learn both that how exactly is this forbidden, and it's really forbidden with the razor. And we also learn that it's only women and not men. Okay? I'm sorry, it's only men and not women, that women are excluded. It's only B'nai Aaron and not Benot Aaron, and that comes to teach you also to the other section. So now we've resolved all that. But there's still something that we haven't figured out. All this came up because we questioned, but wait, what about this Braita? So the Gemara says, the fact that it says in this Braita about the Zakana Isha, is like a zakan lechol divleihem. And we just said it's not women now. So what is that coming to teach you? So we're going to have a few possible suggestions. Okay, there's laws of leprosy, and there's laws of what color hair comes out. That is a sign of leprosy. So Rashi tells us on the skin, it's se'ar lavan, but if it's on the head and the beard, it's a yellow hair that we're looking for. Now, it says, so what's this coming to teach you? That a woman who has a hair that grows on her beard that's yellow is going to be the color that's problematic, just like in a man, yellow is problematic. And we're not going to treat it like any skin on the rest of her body. To which the Gemara says that can't possibly be, that that's what it's teaching us. That is the halacha, but it says so explicitly in the pasuk, and you don't need a drasha for that. You don't need a Braita to tell you that. It says a man or a woman, it says explicitly. You don't need something to tell you that if it says it explicitly. So that can't be what it means. Ella, and as here it sounded like the Braita was telling us a new halacha that we didn't necessarily know. And there it says man or woman, and it gives all the details that it has to be yellow. So it must be, okay, maybe it's a nega, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have to go through a purification process if you're a woman. Maybe, yes, it's yellow, it's a nega, but maybe it's sarat, but maybe you don't have to do all the sacrifices and the birds and all these things you have to do when you finish the process. But they say, no. What are you talking about? If you become impure, then obviously you have to get out of it. In other words, if you have leprosy, then you have to go through the process. You don't need something to teach us. So they say the following. So what do you need it for? You might have thought it says, Isha Isha ki yebo nega berosh, o bezakan. Sorry. You might have read the pasuk as Ish o Isha ki yebo nega berosh, a man or woman who has a nega in his head, and then it says, or in his beard, or in his or her head, right? And then it says, or their beard. Now, maybe the beard is only referring to the men. So, because mostly men have beards. So that's why the Mishnah needs to tell you. So kind of was obvious, but it wasn't 100% obvious, and that's why they had to tell you. Isitane. Now we have, back to the Mishnah. We have 3 cases that women are not obligated or exempt from a negative commandment, even though all other negative commandments, they're part of it. Isitane, Isi taught, Af bal yakarchu nashim p'turot. Also, the shaving, women are exempt from. Do not shave your hair off. My tamidi isi to darishacha. Panim atem lashem elokechem lo titkodedu v'lo tasimu korcha ben enechem lemet ki am kadosh atah lashem elokechem. Okay, these are things you can't do when someone dies. Okay, so here is the pasuk. Panim atem lashem elokechem. Badim says your boys, right? Sons. Lo titkodedu v'lo tasimu korcha ben enechem lemet. Okay, don't. Lotit go to do, right? This is don't mutilate your body, and don't shave off your hair as a reaction to someone dying. So now he says, by the way, women are also exempt, even though it wasn't mentioned in the Mishnah. Now, we say the following. Okay, my Talmud isi, because he says, Banim lo testimu korcha ki am kadosh l'Hashem lokecha. Banim v'lo banot lekorcha. So now it means the korcha is just banim. But now they say, Ata omer lekorcha u'enu ela legdida. But wait, it said banim, and then it said lo titgodedu v'lo testimu korcha. Seems like they're going to say now, lo titgodedu, actually women are obligated in that. Just not the korcha. Shu omer ki am kadosh l'Hashem lokecha. How do we get it? Harei gedida amu. Mani makayim banim v'lo banot lekorcha. We have two things. Am Kadosh sounds like everybody because the whole nation is sanctified. And Bani Matem sounds like just men. So just men is going to go to the Korcha, and everyone included is Lotit Godedu, to which they're going to say, Uma Ra'ita L'Rabot Hagdiada U'Laotziat HaKorcha. It's weird. Why is it? It's random. Which one is which one women are included, which one they're not. Marbani et Hagdida Sheyesh Lo B'Mkom HaSe'al. V'Shalom B'Mkom HaSe'al. Gdida is obviously more all-encompassing, because it's all over the body, even when there is a tear. The pulling out hairs is only where there are hairs. So therefore, we're going to be, the one that's more inclusive is going to include also women as well. And so what about the fact, maybe you'll say, that's just banim. Kadosh is talking about something else. It's actually not mentioned in these psukim at all, but is mentioned in other places, like if Vayikra, right after we talked about don't shave off your hair, it says Seret lenefesh lo tigyu b'sachen, don't scratch your skin off. So why don't you say that? And maybe Am Kadosh is referring to something else entirely that's connected but not said here in the psukim, and then that would make more sense in terms of the fact that the banim is right next to lo titgodedu, and to say all of a sudden that includes women is a little bit strange. Well, why didn't Isi do that? Because Kasavar Isi, Srita, Gdida, Achati. He thinks Srita and Gdida are the same thing. Lo titgodedu, to mutilate your body by scratching. So he views that all as one, in which case he has to have one is in, one is out. And he chose the one that's more all-encompassing to say it also encompasses women. And the one that's just limited to where there's hair is only for men. Okay, that's it for today. So again, we started with the mitzvot aseh shazman grama, continued all the proofs of how we know that these women are obligated, these women are not obligated in. Then we went to how do we know that women are obligated in all negative commandments? We brought 3 psukim and then show why we need all 3 psukim. Then we talked about the 3 negative commandments that they are obligated in. That they're exempt from, my mistake. The 3 that they're actually exempt from. And then we tried to say, how do we know? And then we added a 4th to the picture. And that was based on Isi. Isi had that 4th one that women are also not, that don't have that lo taseh of shaving off your hair for a dead person. If you're very angry, upset, don't shave off your head like that. That's actually something the Gentiles of those times used to do. We can't do it. With that, wishing everybody a Chag Sameach and Shana Tova.